Charles Leclerc's immediate inner circle has dropped an absolute bombshell behind closed doors, warning that treating Lewis Hamilton as Maranello's clear #1 driver will spark a catastrophic internal collapse. The blatant demand for Leclerc to back off and shield Hamilton's 4th position following that crippling 5-second pit lane speed limiter penalty has set off massive alarm bells right across the team hierarchy. Applying relentless pressure on Fred Vasseur to favour the British driver is increasingly viewed as an unmitigated disaster in the making. Leclerc's mental coach, Riccardo Ceccarelli, has firmly declared that reducing the Monegasque driver to a glorified rearguard shield is entirely unacceptable. Hamilton currently trails Kimi Antonelli by 50 points in the standings, making any demand for preferential status borderline absurd. Demanding status with such a massive deficit, whilst Mercedes continues to master the complex thermal efficiency of their power unit, completely guts the morale of the very man who carried Scuderia Ferrari through their darkest campaigns. The critical detail that most commentators consistently gloss over is that Hamilton's penalty in Hungary was not a tactical blunder from the pit wall, but an unforced driver error when engaging the pit lane speed limiter. It highlights his lingering struggle with Ferrari's bespoke electronic braking maps. Forcing Leclerc to lift and coast in turbulent, dirty air would have drastically spiked rear axle temperatures, triggering severe tyre degradation and throwing away vital championship points. This toxic dynamic exposes an unworkable engineering reality inside the garage, demanding that a faster car idle in dirty air directly compromises aerodynamic balance, forcing the power unit to run dangerously hot and dramatically shortening its lifespan. Vasseur is currently walking a high-stakes tightrope: bow to the immense commercial clout of the 7-time world champion, or protect the fiercely competitive driver who understands the limits of this chassis inside out. One wrong tactical call during this tense stretch could trigger an irreversible civil war in the paddock. Max Verstappen blew the lid off Red Bull Racing inside the garage after detonating the Red Bull 22 over team radio, labeling the handling utterly unshakable following violent snap oversteer during high-speed corner entries. The atmosphere inside the garage turned completely toxic when technical director Pierre Wache delivered a scathing counterattack, strongly insinuating that the 4-time world champion is aggressively overloading the mechanical platform by driving well beyond physical limits, demanding front-end grip where the aggressive aerodynamic floor setup physically fails to deliver. The tipping point in this escalating war was the dangerous failure of the rotating rear wing mechanism widely known as the Macarena. The mechanical actuator seized under extreme load during crucial sessions, creating a brutal aerodynamic asymmetry that left the chassis almost impossible to control. Verstappen openly warned that the entire assembly represents an unacceptable hazard, flatly refusing to push the car to its limit without absolute safety guarantees. This internal rift fully exposed how the loss of their precise underfloor operating window completely destroyed the predictable rear-end stability that Max had mastered during the era dominated by Adrian Newey. Whilst Kimi Antonelli cruises in the Mercedes with immaculate management of energy deployment and Lando Norris racks up commanding victories for McLaren, Red Bull finds itself sinking into an absolute abyss in the Constructors Championship. The fundamental engine mapping of the Red Bull Ford power unit completely drains the hybrid battery before reaching the end of long straights, forcing Verstappen to overcompensate with overly aggressive late braking that cooks the rubber compounds within mere laps. With the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile clamping down hard on engine flow updates, senior executives are seriously contemplating abandoning development of the current chassis entirely to pivot early towards 2027. Verstappen's trust in the technical leadership has utterly collapsed, and whispers across the paddock insist he is preparing to activate an immediate performance release clause to execute a shock exit. The sheer magnitude of this technical implosion signals that the dynasty built on absolute track dominance is unraveling at a terrifying pace. Carlos Sainz's high-stakes tenure with Williams has spiraled into a total nightmare, prompting the Spanish driver to prepare his exit from the Grove outfit for 2027. The ambitious project, aggressively sold by team principal James Vowles, completely disintegrated under the technical realities of the 2026 regulations, leaving the chassis languishing in a dismal 15th position in the standings. In a shocking twist, Sergio Perez smelled blood in the water and initiated a ruthless behind-the-scenes campaign to snatch the seat straight out from under Sainz's feet. Operating on a brief one-year deal at Cadillac, Perez instructed his management team to open discreet negotiations with senior Williams leadership to secure a transition for 2027 without triggering costly contract buyout penalties. The Mexican veteran brings a staggering commercial package backed by giant corporate sponsors like America Mobil, which fully covers his multi-million-pound salary whilst pumping raw profit directly into the team budget. Sainz was left completely stunned after watching his technical leadership and track capability bypassed by the raw financial power brought by his rival. The abysmal performance of the current aerodynamic package pushed Sainz past his absolute breaking point during recent race weekends. Williams continues to suffer from severe weight overhang issues within the main chassis structure, alongside disastrous electrical energy recovery failures on corner exits, which severely compromises top-end speed down the straights. Adding a bitter layer of irony to this whole ordeal, Vowles appears completely ready to welcome Perez, the very driver he publicly branded as deeply frustrating following that costly collision with Alexander Albon during the 2023 Singapore Grand Prix. The sheer influx of sponsorship money effectively wiped away years of reckless crashes and expensive damage repair bills. This astonishing pivot signals a complete surrender of technical standards in exchange for immediate financial survival inside the factory. By sacrificing the superior feedback and raw single-lap pace offered by Sainz, Williams risks falling permanently behind rival midfield operations that prioritize pure engineering over corporate funding. Choosing financial life support over genuine competitive merit exposes the immense fragility of the entire operation, threatening to destroy any remaining credibility the team held in the paddock. Red Bull Racing has made the shocking decision to throw in the towel on their 2026 campaign, triggering an extreme maneuver within the technical grey areas of the regulations that has sent massive shockwaves right through the paddock. With 0 victories across the opening 11 Grand Prix events and languishing over 200 points adrift of Mercedes in the standings, the top hierarchy at Milton Keynes has effectively abandoned development on the troubled Red Bull 22 chassis. The brutal reality facing 4-time world champion Max Verstappen is that team management chose to discreetly divert crucial wind tunnel testing hours and computational fluid dynamics allocation directly towards their 2027 project, openly sacrificing the remainder of his racing season. The underlying motivation behind this drastic pivot stems from a crushing regulatory barrier imposed by the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile. Their technical automated monitoring systems classified the Red Bull Ford power unit as the absolute fastest on isolated dyno benchmarks, which legally triggered a total lock on performance upgrades for the electrical components throughout this current year. Without any regulatory freedom to modify the fuel flow rates or optimize battery deployment maps, senior engineers quickly realized that burning valuable budget cap resources on the Red Bull 2022 was equivalent to throwing money directly down the drain. Red Bull's clever tactical gamble relies on getting a massive head start on the sweeping regulatory overhaul outlined by technical director Nicolas Tombazis for 2027. The governing body is officially ditching the deeply flawed 50-50 electrical split concept, shifting the balance back towards 60% internal combustion power and 40% hybrid deployment, whilst unlocking an additional 20 kilowatts of output alongside a 5% increase in maximum fuel flow allowance. Because the current underfloor design suffers from sudden aerodynamic downforce drops and the rear wing assembly introduces severe high-speed instability. Refocusing entire factory resources onto the future, architecture provides an immense developmental advantage over rival teams. Verstappen currently finds himself trailing Kimi Antonelli by a staggering 110 points in the Drivers' Championship, having recently compared the handling of his machinery to a junior Formula 3 car during race conditions. The Dutch driver fully recognizes that writing off this season represents the only viable path towards securing a championship-winning package next year. Yet enduring such public humiliation near the bottom of the grid could ultimately serve as the final catalyst for him to activate his exit clause ahead of schedule.